We've got a lot to get through. Michael Long to join us as we lead up to Richmond versus Essendon. And to quote the great Ted Whitten, Big Ange, he's stuck it up him, Chief. We need to speak about him in your Slaughterhouse. Well done to Ange Postecoglou. I look across at my man who has been looking better and better. He's got a suit on. He's got a jacket on. He looks amazing. He's half shaven. He's had some big business to do today, which you'll tell us about, Damo. Nice to see you.
I had to buy a new razor during the week here. The other one packed it in. Look, it was the Bailey Smith grudge match last night. It was Mitch Duncan's 300th. Jeremy Cameron kicked 6. It's 13 in 2 weeks' time, 2 weeks period. Matt Kennedy's form has been unbelievable for the Bulldogs. It was one of the games of the year. The Cats beating the Bulldogs down there at the Cattery. But all everyone was talking about was the Kane Corns verbal stoush with Luke Beveridge pre-match. And there's a few layers to it, what it means for the broadcaster, what also it means for the relationship between the Bulldogs and Kane. But there was a conversation along the lines of, do you know what you do to people, was the tone of the retort from Luke Beveridge back to Kane Corns, or something of that nature. And it's not going away.
Damo's just taken up the first 4 minutes before we got to introduce our next two, but it's a nice start. Long, real long. Nathan's here, though.
I thought it was the forward four, Howie. I've gone earlier, haven't I?
We got to
I haven't got a forward four now.
Your teammates, Nathan Brown, who called the socks over last night on the M's. Hello to you, Noodle. Keep it short because Damo sort of extended things.
I like to come in positive. I'm a positive person, and there's a lot to be happy about. Bitcoin all-time high this week. It is a good place to be.
I look across at my man, the Chief. Now, today, he's got the white Archie thong on. He's got the King G short, and this is where the combo is nice. He's got a maroon Adidas top, offset by maroon and burnt orange LA Dodgers cap, which is a rarity. He looks amazing. Hello to you, Chiefy.
Hello, Howie, and might I say that not many people could pull off a flannelette shirt tied around their waist, worn as a skirt.
But I can.
And you haven't.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief. Hey, what a night it was. We'll get to you for in a moment. But, Jesus, a good night of the footy last night. To be at the Cattery, Nate, you were there. There was 40,000. It was 30-odd goals. It was just a brilliant night at the footy.
Great game of footy, and two really good teams who are going to go deep into September. And I love that high scoring and the fact that there wasn't a loose at either end. And I was listening to Chris Scott in his press conference, and he said if we had to put a loose back, it would have been hard work for us to score, and you need to score against the Western Bulldogs. And I love that attitude.
All right, it is time for...
These are the Friday Huddle's favourite headlines.
To breaking news. Returning now to this morning's top story.
It's 4 at 4 from the last 24.
This interests me because Damo went off real early in the whole start.
We normally start with Damo, don't we?
Have you got anything else
No,
for us,
I gave it anything, Howie, and I went too early. Sorry.
What with all your good gear? What are you going to bring to the table now? Because it's 4 at 4, not 4 at 3.
Well, it was, unfortunately, as we did touch on, the pre-match verbal between the coach of the Bulldogs and the Channel 7 mouth, Kane Corns. So that was the focus. We'll touch on it during the next 3 hours of our time together. But it did, I think, become the focus of the game, which was one of the games of the year.
What did you make of it, Damo?
Look, I've got myself into stoushes with a lot of people, including the man in question.
At a Brownlow?
At a Brownlow, yeah.
But personally, I don't think it reflected well upon either of them.
I'm with you, Chief. And again, Kane is getting very defensive these days when you say something about him. And again, I'm not going to judge him for what happened, but I'm not sure it's what the host broadcaster wants to have each and every time. And I say each and every time because it's now happened twice now in the past month where he has been the focus. They were happy to play it up, though. They were happy to play it up. But there's a reflection piece that I know has been going on today. Yep. And again, I'll let people from Channel 7 represent how they want to have their broadcast judged by the public. But I can tell you today, Chief, there has been a lot of calls made.
AFL step in?
I haven't got involved in that side of it. Are you asking because you've heard that?
I have heard that.
Right. I haven't heard that. Okay, so what tone did that come?
I don't know any details other than to say I think there might have been some discussions between the AFL and the host broadcaster.
Okay.
Considering what happened between Ken Hinkley and James Sicily last year, they're a coach and a player. These are media people with a coach, so they'd have to talk about it, Chief, at the highest level.
Are you saying more from the Bulldogs' perspective or Kane's perspective?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. No, I haven't seen that part of it. But again, I think they need to work out what it is they want to do as the host broadcaster, because it is detracting from what the host broadcaster would normally attempt to do.
I would want to fight Bevo. He's got big arms. He's nasty. I've actually fought the other guy, so I'm not sure what he's doing going after Bevo.
I don't think he's nasty. Funnily enough, he was walking over to do a interview with us on Fox Live at the time when it happened. So we were aware that maybe something small had happened. So I thought, as I was telling Nathan, that I'd just sort of lighten the mood a bit because we had a minute with the coach who's a very engaging
what did you
man.
roll out
Well,
with?
I just said, I think your arms are amazing. How much time do you spend in the gym?
This is straight after the feud.
And he told me that he spends a lot of time swimming in the bay. And then I asked him who would win out of an arm wrestle between him and Adam Kingsley. And he said definitely Adam Kingsley. And then he was happy as well. He was fantastic.
There's too much envy in the way you cover games, Howie, because as soon as you see someone with any shape, the man love comes out, doesn't
Oh,
it?
Chiefy, wait till my little hot tip for you today. It includes how to get ripped as well. But, Nate, it is time for your... now, keep it short, though, because Damo's taken up most of this.
There's a theme with my show today, and it goes into the top 5 later on the back of Bailey Smith. People who speak their minds. Now, during the week, speaking her mind was... Danielle Collins, the tennis player. Now, I'll take you back to the Australian Open where she spoke her mind about our man, Tony Jones.
But I love this old guy. Tony Jones? He's very, sorry, everybody in the room that's over, 70. Sorry. I just love how he called me a brat. And, it's just so, Gen Z and millennial right now. It's Charlie XCX.
So then this week, she's playing tennis, and this is the sort of thing she gets upset about. So she's changing ends in France, and the cameraman got a little bit too close.
I was taking some water, so if you could, I don't know, I need to get water. We're on a changeover. You don't need to be that close to me, and you don't need to be on top of Emma. It's, wildly inappropriate. It's not that difficult to give space.
Poor old cameraman's just trying to do his job at the change of ends, Chief.
She did it with gentle humour, though. She had a laugh, so it wasn't abusive.
No, when you look at it, it was...
Come on.
Gee, a bit harsh.
Nicknamed the Danimal. That's the way she rolls.
The what?
The Danimal. That's what they call. That's her nickname.
Haven't heard that one.
Danielle
Does
Collins.
she go with that?
She does. Chiefy,
Yes.
before this completely goes off the rails, what you got for
Well,
us?
look, I don't know about many of our listeners, but I grew up watching a lot of the James Bond movies from
Chief.
the early Sean Connery days, who was clearly the best. And then he was superseded by Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan came along, and Daniel Craig, who's been a brilliant James Bond. Well, the search has been on for the next James Bond because Daniel Craig said he's a bit old and it's time to pass the baton. And there'd been a big push for a female. But the powers that be have said, no, it'll be another male Brit. And some of the names that have been thrown up in the past were Henry Cavill, who we all know, Tom Hardy, who's a great actor, Theo James, if you don't know him, he's from the Divergent series, and he did one of the Underworld movies with Kate Beckinsale.
Okay.
But the latest one to become the front runner is a gentleman by the name of Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Jono,
And you know why?
AJ.
why?
Because he's just signed a big deal with Omega, who supply the watches for all the James Bond. That's where it's come in. So he has taken the front running, if you don't mind.
Well, I like that, Chief.
When I first met Christina, one of our first dates, she said, "You remind me of Daniel Craig."
Was she having eye trouble?
She was on the
on,
stuff. She used to be like Leroy. Did she used to bubble one up a little occasionally? Did she get confused?
She didn't.
Final one.
Perfect eyesight.
Monaco Grand Prix this weekend. It's one of the great sporting events, not motorsport events, one of the great sporting events. It'll all be about Saturday and qualifying. Very difficult to pass. So you need to qualify on pole, and if you don't stuff up your pit stops, of which there are 2 mandatory pit stops this year, you should win the race. So it's all about qualifying. Couple of things I noticed this week. This will interest you, Nate. Lando Norris, the McLaren superstar, was cited in a pair of jeans called Chrome Hearts that were valued at $15,000 US.
US.
That's 15. Your Chrome Hearts. Google it.
22.5 Aussie.
However, when you're in Monaco, you can afford this type of thing because you don't pay tax. Now, Damo, here in Victoria, we have a slightly...
I was wondering where you're going.
A slightly different style of
Arrangement.
setup. Now, we do pay tax, which is good because the money can go to the hospitals and education and roads and looking after the Victorians.
Yeah.
Well, I forensically examined the state budget this week, Chief, and there was a couple of numbers that stuck out to me. So when you have worked hard this week, and well done to everybody in Victoria for going and putting the nose to the grindstone, working hard, putting your money aside for tax, so you can build the hospitals and the roads, etc.
Fill the potholes.
However, there's a slight issue.
Oh, Terry McCrann.
There's a slight issue. Because our interest bill is going to blow out to $10.6 billion a year just to pay our interest bill. Unfortunately, Damo, that means when you go to work, Damo, and you put your little pot aside to help the hospitals and the schools, etc., the first 28.9 million of tax per day is going just to pay the interest.
Wow.
So when you're next hard at work and you think, it's all right, I'm doing the right thing by my state, do not forget that the first 28.9 mil, Chief, is just to keep the interest payments. It's like paying off your credit card.
I like the fact you've been able to drill down.
Yes.
Who's run up all this debt?
The current government, Chief, I think it'd be fair to say.
Where did it start?
With the previous premier.
Darcy's man.
Yeah, Darcy's man.
Darcy's man.
Obviously, there was
Dan the man.
the reason with COVID, which was a very nasty situation, so we went into the world's biggest lockdown, and unfortunately, I don't know how, but that has somehow meant that our economy got stymied, Damo, and now we're saddled with a bill.
When the budget was announced,
Yes.
there were, quote, no new taxes.
No.
They've just all increased.
No.
The ones
Do you
we've got.
pay tax on your offshore accounts with the US dollars?
Yes, I do.
They're in Monaco.
I do. You do. But anyway, work hard because every day you wake up, just remember the fact we're 29 mil in the hole just to get back to square one that day.
All right, we need to talk about Ange Postecoglou. You made mention of it before, and it's worth having a chat about this because we need to understand what he's gone through. So Ange was a very, very highly rated player, and then he's had a storied career as a manager. You know, starting off in the NSL here, Brisbane Roar he had success with, went to Japan. He's been to Celtic and just won more trophies than anyone could ever think of there. And for the last 2 seasons, he's been in charge of one of the big EPL clubs, a big London club in Tottenham Hotspur, who we affectionately call Spurs. So they had a great first year. They burst out of the blocks, and he was like the second coming. Everyone loved him, which is very rare because if you're not European or South American, you get no traction over there, let me tell you. But then they ended up finishing 5th in his first season, so they qualified for the Europa League.
Solid.
And then things started to go horribly wrong. They were cruelled by injury, and they finished 17th in the second year. But it was interesting because he's never had any favours done for him by the media, and one of them, in fact, just questioned how he thought he was going to go.
You said at the start of the season, the first campaign really about setting principles, getting your message across. The second campaign, you normally win. Are you seeing enough in this side that this season you do think that they will be a side that can win?
I'll correct myself. I don't usually win things. I always win things in my second year.
I love that.
He's getting a little bit prickly because he's been given no love by any of the press. So anyway, they ended up finishing 17th, which is a poor year by their standards. But they were cruelled by injuries in his second season. But they had a great run in the Europa League, and they made it all the way through the final. And then prior to the final being played earlier this week, a gentleman by the name of Dan Kilpatrick wrote this article saying that Ange Postecoglou was teetering between hero and clown, which was probably a bold thing to say, a very disrespectful thing to say, I thought, for a journo. And then Ange had this to say in the pre-game presser.
I just wondered if you're kind of conscious that you're walking a fine line between kind of two very different types of infamy and history, really.
That depends on your outlook, Dan, but I'll tell you one thing, irrespective of tomorrow, I'm not a clown. I never will be, mate, and you're really disappointed that you would use such terminology about a person who, for 26 years, without any favours from anyone, has worked his way to be in a position where he's leading out a club in a European major competition. For you to suggest that somehow us not being successful means that I'm a clown, not really sure how to answer that question.
I love that. I love how he handled himself. He kept respectful when he could have just launched on the bloke. So then the final goes ahead, and what happens? They win.
How long since they won a trophy, Chief?
2007. So it was 17 years. He delivers silverware as promised, mind you. And by winning, it's a major European trophy. By winning the Europa League, guess what? They qualify for the Champions League next year.
Is that worth a bit?
Do you know what that delivers to the club?
How much, Chief?
Over $200 million.
Wow.
So I ask you, Dan, who's the clown now? And just when you think everything's going to get sorted, the inserter comes along, Nathan. And you know who the inserter is?
I don't know who the
He
inserter
sits
is.
alongside us. He decides to jump on social media and start making posts.
What did I do?
Who?
About promoting your own podcast, saying how good that Ange won, but he's the only three-time person on the Howie Games. How good is this? I know Ange. He's my friend. He's on the Howie Games. You hijacked a Europa League final to plug the Howie Games.
Chief, let me respond. You know, about 6 weeks ago, I said that Beersy wasn't doing his job here. I felt sorry for him. I've brought him on board the Howie Games social team.
Oh, no.
He went rogue and he's gone and posted that Ange has been on the show, which he
without
has
you clearing it.
twice.
Oh,
Hey,
You cleared that, Howie.
I think
You
he
can't
got-
blame
You would have
Beersy
asked
all
him
the
to do
time.
it.
I think he got a $4 million
Bonus.
$4 million bonus. So, Chief,
But
are
they
you
still
keeping
haven't-
him?
They
Keep him.
still haven't decided.
Oh,
That will
keep
probably
him.
be decided by Monday, I think. I hope they keep him.
gotta
He's a
keep
ripper,
him.
and the players love him.
And just, Chief, where does Europa League fit into the prestige? Because I don't follow it
the
like
old
you do.
UEFA Cup.
Yeah.
In the olden days, there used to be the European Cup and the UEFA Cup.
Yep.
And it's kind of the UEFA Cup, and the European
Okay.
Cup became the Champions League, if that makes
So
sense.
of all the
yes,
trophies
look,
he had access
Champions
to-
League's above Europa League.
Yes.
So the top top four teams in EPL go into the Champions League. I think 5, 6. I don't know how many now. Might even be 7 and 8 go into the Europa League.
5 going to the European Championship from the EPL because they get an extra spot because of how good they are at the moment in the EPL.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, well done to Ange. Well done. Mark Howard, Damien Barrett, Nathan Brown and Jason Dunstall. Incredible night at the footy last night. Plus 100 scores. Bailey Smith being interviewed afterwards talking about getting injections. The coach saying he knew nothing about it. There was a lot to take in. But, Damo, before we get to media wars and you can tell us about Tasmania, I was working with the great Jack Rewalt last night and he told me a little story that just made me smile about our man, Nath. He talked about the fact Jack, as a young 18-year-old Tasmanian, very new to the bright lights of Melbourne, he came over to Melbourne and he moved in with Nathan Brown. Now, I always, as you know, like bums on seats players, and that's what Nath was.
I haven't heard this story.
So he moves in with Nath and move in Ackland Street, and he said this is his strongest memory of his first year at Punt Road. Nath had a BMW X5. Did you live in Ackland Street? Have I got that part right?
Ackland Street, St Kilda.
Did you have a BMW X5?
Yes.
He said he's come from Tassie, right, from Clarence, pretty sheltered, and he gets picked up by the great Nathan Brown, and every day on the way home from training, Nath's car in 2006 had a television in it, and they would drive home from training along Punt Road, Chief, and watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And Jack thought it was the greatest thing in his life. True story?
True story.
Oh, Nate.
Had a TV in the car, and I figured out that there's a few hacks because they're not meant to work while you
they're
drive.
not meant to
But
work.
There's a hack where you can get them to work, Damo.
This does
And I
look
was
like
just-
a
I was
long-year
just
shelf
impressing
life
the young
story.
man, Jack.
He said it was the greatest thing he'd ever seen. He gets in with his star forward, and all of a sudden he's watching telly on the way. What else happened there at Ackland Street? He told me a few other stories. Probably I don't need to bring to the table.
3 months he lived with me for, and it was just part of training leading into Christmas. And he was really quiet, and he turned into someone who wasn't quiet, and he was quite opinionated in the end, but very quiet, very respectful. And it was a quick 3 months, and I take full responsibility for him being a 3-time premiership player and a star in the media now.
Where did he go after the 3 months? Did you boot him out?
No, I think he went in with a host family after that. So
But the mentoring you gave him in those initial stages
without
clearly
doubt,
set him
without
up.
doubt, set him up for
Yeah.
life. Yep.
He said that. He said the level of he said it was like moving in with Tom Brady. He said that level of professionalism was brought to the table.
Wait, his
I was
food.
professional when I played
I'm
football.
not saying you weren't. That's exactly what Jack said. All right,
When I
time
played
for.
In footy, the battles aren't only fought on the field.
The scoreboard on Fox is pretty big, isn't it?
They shut them out unless they pay. We're free for everybody.
This might be your worst take of the year in opening round.
This is the Footy Media Wars.
Damo, we like to be very honest on this show. We just had a 2-minute discussion amongst ourselves about whether we would talk about what we are now about to talk about on this very segment, didn't we?
We did. And there's another number of reasons why we weren't going to, having already done it on the start of our show today at 4 o'clock. But we're going to go down the path again of speaking about what happened pre-match last night at the Cattery, the verbal confrontation between Kane Corns of Channel 7 and Luke Beveridge, the coach of the Western Bulldogs, and the aftermath to it and the lead up to it. For those who didn't see it, there was a quick exchange pre-match and then the subsequent takes by both individuals. Kane Corns first.
Yeah, look, there was a confrontation, there was some words spoken, but look, he's combative and they do like to protect their clubs and their players. I don't have an issue with it. It's a big game of footy and clearly the relationship between myself and the Western Bulldogs isn't a strong one.
You've been banned from the rooms. You've targeted him in the past around his tenure and whether he's the right man for the job. You feel he went out of his way there?
Oh, not so much. I mean, it was an awkward situation because he was staring at me quite strongly and I didn't really know what to say, so I just said, "G'day, Bevo," and it wasn't received that well, as you can see there in the vision. And I would have liked to have gone on with the conversation and had it respectfully, but it wasn't the time or the place.
So that's Kane's take. Mitch Cleary's voicing that conversation as well. Spoke to Luke Beveridge as part of the post-match media conference last night, and he didn't want to engage, but he still gave some context.
Take us through the incident with Kane Corns pre-game from your perspective and how that unfolded.
What incident?
Oh, you shared some words with Kane. It looked like you got quite close with him.
Ultimately, when we come in here and we talk about the game, I think that's probably all we're after, isn't it? If you're trying to drum up any controversy, I don't think there was any. So I've really got nothing to say.
Just the vision looks like you walked past each other and you shared some words. So I know you've had in the past you've been strong against Kane, and you might have even been left out of your rooms. You've locked him out of your rooms in the past.
I know what you're trying to do, Mitch. You're not going to get me to bite.
So part of the reason we did debate, Howie, whether we did speak about it or not, was the fact that it was one of the games of the year that Jeremy Cameron has now kicked 13 goals in his past 2 matches. Matt Kennedy's form for the Bulldogs has been extraordinary. Mitch Duncan played his 300th game, and here we are. And the way the media works, we're talking about in the eyes of some people, a non-issue prior to the game.
We shouldn't be. We should be talking about what happened last night in the football field, how good Bailey Smith was. His interview after the game where he talked about Mitch Duncan and the fact that it was all about me all week, so I felt bad about that. Shannon Neal arriving as a player, kicking 5 goals, yet we're talking about a coach and defending his players again. I like that part of Luke Beveridge, the fact that he's happy to go head-to-head with anybody who he feels aggrieved going at his players in his footy club.
There's layers to it, and obviously Channel 7 being a host broadcaster, it's not normal for a Stoush to be of this nature and so public. It does happen, by the way, standoffs and media bans. It happened obviously 2 weeks earlier with the North Melbourne situation as well. Today, Chief revealed before, Howie, that the AFL has got involved in this particular matter, and I've spoken to people connected with Channel 7. They're not completely comfortable with it. The public positioning on it will be, we'll back our man, and what happens, happens. But it is a scenario that is not normal for the host broadcaster of the game to be in conflict so obviously, so publicly, and so all-consuming as Channel 7 now is with Kane Corns.
Yes, I pose it to you guys. I've thought about this a lot because the irony of it, the coach is walking over to appear on Fox, obviously because it doesn't have a relationship that's just been described there with what's happened with Kane at 7. But I can't get my head around this, Chief. You've been in this caper longer than all of us, but we all work in the media and television and radio for a long time. This type of antagonism between a team and an individual on your broadcast team, but all the extra attention it brings to your broadcast, which can result in more viewers, which is the business you're in. Is that the path it's going down, or is it going down the opposite path? So is it a positive or a negative for you as a broadcaster? I'm not sure in my own mind. Do you think it's a positive or negative?
I think it could be getting to the stage where it's detracting from the coverage. I mean, it's now twice in the last 4 weeks where the host broadcaster is promoting a game on the fact that there's friction attached to either the ban in North Melbourne's case that was slapped on Kane for comments that he made, I felt quite demeaningly about Harry Sheasel, and that's what North Melbourne thought, and now this confrontation. Now, again, just to I suppose, delve into a little bit what happened, there was an eye contact, and I don't know what that means, but there was a conversation or a line along the lines of, do you know what you do to people? Again, I'm not claiming that to be the exact line, but that was Bevo's, I suppose, response once it did reach that sort of flashpoint.
What about at Fox, Howie? And it didn't happen at Fox, but Channel 7 and Fox are the two host broadcasters. Is something like this happened at Fox with one of your staff? What would be the take at Fox?
It's a great question. Fox, I was interested to see, just sitting in the commentary box in the studio, Chief, that you guys talked about it with John Ralph. That interested me. I was thinking, I'll be interested to see whether they do talk about this or don't talk about this. Was there any discussion? I'm not sure what you're at liberty to talk about as to whether Fox would talk about the issue that had happened.
No, I can't even remember. Truth be told, I can't even remember what Ralphie said. Can you remind me? I know he said it at the end of his.
He just covered it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is I suppose.
To me, it's just a soap opera, honestly. And I said earlier, I think Kane knew what he was doing, knew he'd get a response, and I think Bevo reacting the way he didn't help himself either. So I don't think it reflects particularly well on either of them.
It's a great question, Nath. We're all different individuals, and you guys were giving me a hard time earlier on in the year when Kane came on the podcast, and I said I couldn't have been more impressed by someone, and I found him so strong-willed and open-minded, and he's doing an amazing job in the media. So I'm a massive fan of Kane, but you can only put yourself in that shoes. In my shoes, if I had a blue with a cricketer once overseas, and it rattled me completely.
Which cricketer?
No, I'm not going to talk about it because that's not me. But if we had to then go and talk about that on the broadcast, I'd be horrified. But
Kane wants to talk
Yeah,
about it.
that's what we're all
Kane
different
brings this
individuals,
on,
so I'm not
yeah.
saying it's right or wrong.
But
it's
is that
just,
bringing his own network down? And I
Well,
ask
I
that
don't- that's
because
what I ask you, I don't know.
I'm not going to name names here, and they can do what they want to do publicly and privately. But it's not for everyone at Channel 7 with what's going on there. There's a lot of pushback now on.
But
on
they were
what is
happy to
happening.
play it up, Damo.
Yeah, Channel 7 is, and the people running Channel 7 are, Chief. At
So
the
would
moment.
would you have played it as 7, as the broadcaster, knowing what was going to come? Would you have said, right, we're going to play this and we're going to talk about it with Kane on air?
I think you're all in on the
Right.
situation, yeah, and until you're not. And whether conversations today will see a pullback, I doubt it very much. They've invested so much in Kane, they've invested in what Kane brings, and they are, I think, stoking the Kane fire. And that's just my take on what I see now as a person who observes Channel 7 and knows the people involved. I mean, they're pumping him up to the point where he is the lead act on all of their shows, and you take what you get with that. But it's not for everyone at that network, and there are conversations that are even being had right now about it not being ideal in everyone's eyes.
What was more alarming was Rui's outfit. Did you see Rui? He looked like he was going for world domination with a jacket and a really high black skivvy and his blonde hair slicked back. He was going for like a Gru world domination type thing.
We're all told what to wear. We are all told what to wear.
Rui's not told what to wear. Not a chance anybody said, here, put this skivvy on, and anyone would say, yes. Rui said, I'm bringing a skivvy in. I'm going to go for world domination tonight.
Damo, we move along.
Just before we do,
yes.
was it an Australian cricketer?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
An Indian cricketer?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, that would be bad.
An English cricketer?
No, I'm not going to talk
What
about it.
country did he come
I'm not
from?
talking about it. Let's move
What
on. Because I'm
country
not
did he-
comfortable
just-
talking about
just
that
give us the
topic.
country.
Who was it?
No, I'm not going to talk
You'll
about
Was he a
satisfy us if
left-hand
you
batter or a
just-
right-hand
I'm
batter?
not going
You
into
normally
the
love
details.
talking about yourself.
No, I don't. I think that's the whole point of what
Just
we're
give us
talking
the
about.
country.
Damien.
Just the
No,
country.
I'm not, Chief. Not. I'll tell you off air. Blow your mind. Now, Damo, you wrote this week about Tasmania. You wrote beautifully about Tasmania. I think it's public. You've caught up with Brendan Gale a couple of times. He's been in the media.
Yep.
I can't wait to see how Tassie will go and the Devils.
Yeah.
What's happening down there?
They're trying to keep it moving, Howie, as seamlessly as they can, knowing that the government down there in Tassie, both houses of parliament, need to get this stadium issue flushed through both houses. And the timeline on that will be a June to July period, and everyone's hoping that there's an answer to it in a favourable sense at that stage. In the interim, they are doing everything they can to get their ducks lined up. They've named Derek Hine and others in a recruiting and list management sense. They will wait and hold off on a football operations boss. He will be, or she will be appointed first, and then the coach comes. And I'm convinced, Howie, that Chris Scott's the man that they would ideally like. Now, they're not going to say that in as many words publicly, but he has admitted, and he did go on record, Brendan Gale, this week, that yes, he will speak to him. I believe they already have in some form, in fact, in a meaningful form. Chris Scott's contracted till the end of 2026. He's all in on the Cats.
What sort of wedge would that be worth, Damien, to be the first coach?
It's interesting because I think you could write your own contract.
The AFL are paying for it.
No, they'll run independently. No, they'll run independently, Brownie. It won't be like. It won't be like. They'll be
Gold
forced
Coast
to
or
run.
the
Yeah, it
Giants.
won't be like the Gold Coast or the Giants. There's going to be a lot of concessions given to players, and there'll be a sign-on fee of $1 million for the main marquee player they do sign, separate to the contract.
Could it be a $2 million gig for the coach? $2 million per year?
I think it could be
With something similar as a sign-on.
Yeah, and if it's Chris Scott, it could be that times 6 or 7 first up.
And if you are taking over as coach, the way it's set up, like we've seen, the Giants have been fantastic. The Gold Coast haven't played finals as yet. We saw the Melbourne Storm the second year in the comp. They won the.
It was early, wasn't it?
I think it was
99,
second year.
so yeah.
It could have been. Can this team succeed? Because if I'm a coach, I'm thinking, I don't want to go down there for getting 6 years of beltings.
Yeah. That they want to, and there's a bit of argy-bargy about the concessions that the AFL at this stage have said you need to trade. I think it's 6 of your top 11 picks we will give you inside that first round of
But they're
the
debating
first
about
selection.
what they have to trade, aren't they?
They are now. Yeah. I had a breakfast today. Other media were there too, and it was on the record, and it was a pushback on that. We want to control the picks we get. Again, there's a lot to play out in that space, but getting back to your question, the intent is to get some seasoned players in. But whether they go for the Gary Ablett type that Gold Coast Suns did, or smooth it out with some high-end players of a lesser profile nature, but bring them in en masse.
Solid characters
and high-end quality players, but not necessarily the best in the game. I reckon that might be the model they'll be pursuing.
Love it, Damo. Great summation. We've got to get to a break to speak to Jaden Short in a moment. Timeline, briefly. When do you think they will name a coach?
Not until 2026. late 26 and early 27 at the earliest. And if it is a Chris Scott who's still coaching, they'll wait till the first game of 2028 for him to be in charge.
All right, what if they get
If they get access
What
to
if they
it.
get Pendles?
If they get Pendles, as Nathan Brown suggested they might. I expect Ken Hinkley to be involved too, Howie, somewhere, whether it be in a footy operations role or a senior football mentoring role. I reckon he's a perfect fit.
Jaden Short to join us next from McDonald's and Ream Hot Water, Triple M Rocks Football. Nath, last week you did the top 5 hair dyers in football.
Yes.
And you put Cameron Mooney not in the top 5.
But I was a watch on him.
You were a watch because you said you'd studied his Instagram page as to whether there was any discernible change.
Couldn't figure it out.
I did the football on Fox with Moons last Saturday. First thing he said, I was listening to Brownie's segment when he wasn't sure whether I could have gone in the top 5. Tell Nathan he can put me in the top 5.
He's a hair rinser.
Good on him.
Said he's had a few issues with greys.
Somebody else mentioned Jordan Lewis that I should look at. Very black hair for Jordan Lewis. You worked with him the other night.
Chief smiling.
I did.
Why didn't you ask
Why are you
him?
laughing, Chief?
I have no, nothing.
No, I didn't ask.
Everyone's gone quiet.
You did put someone else in and he blew right up.
Jim.
Jim.
It's gone on all week too. That's brilliant. Okay, so on the back of Bailey Smith, he's been refreshing. He's been swearing a lot, but it's been entertaining. And we don't see that a lot because mostly when people pop their head up and do something a little bit left of centre, their head gets knocked off or knocked back down. This isn't the way we do things.
In
this isn't the way we do
Australia.
In Australia, absolutely in Australia. So a couple of honourable mentions here. The first one I'm going to go back to 2016. Remember Boomer Harvey? Now, North Melbourne, and I don't have audio of this one, couldn't find it, but a frustrating team. In a post-match interview, he actually singled out teammates as the captain, Lockie Hansen and Sam Wright, for how poorly they played that day.
Ooh.
And then also, not the coach at this stage either, he's the captain. He said that players would be dropped on the back of this, and he'll make sure they're dropped. So that was Boomer Harvey.
That was
back
16.
2016,
Well,
yeah.
they ended his career in the same year, the
They
club.
certainly
so
did.
it may have
They
had something to do with
certainly
those
did.
comments.
An honourable mention goes to a guy that was changing football clubs in 2016, and he had the choice of 2 football clubs. One was Collingwood, one was Richmond. Richmond go on to win 3 of the next 4 premierships, but this guy chose the other one.
I thank Richmond and I wish them luck, but yeah, I'm a Collingwood player. People may think I'm silly because Richmond have a lot of good players. You know, talk about their midfield with Cochin and Martin, but I think Collingwood have a better list, a younger list, who in a few years' time hopefully will winning premierships, and that's my ultimate goal and this team's goal.
That's Adam Treloar, and absolutely got everybody jumped onto him as well. And then he played Richmond; they got into him as well. So you don't just hear players talking like that anymore, Howie.
But it's good when they do because then it gets built up like it did last night,
I
Noodle.
love it. I love it. A man we've spoken about today. His name is Jack Rewalt. Tigers weren't going that well back in 2014. 2013, they made the finals for the first time. And then Jack, just out of the blue, had this to say.
We went one way with our game and the game went the other way, really. So I really don't know what to say in terms of how I can emphasise it anymore. That we just need to get back to playing good tough footy, and we probably tried to copy Hawthorn a little bit too much with our kicking style, and we probably need to rely a little bit more on natural progression, which I think we'll get back to, and I know we'll get back to it. And I'm looking forward to it. It's just you try new things, and unfortunately you learn from your mistakes. We've learned from it.
Certainly Damien Hardwick wasn't overly pumped with his game plan being questioned by one of the players. And that resulted in Jack being chased by cameras through the back streets of Richmond. Yes,
Wow. Through the train station.
I wonder where he learnt to speak his mind.
That was the first 3 months of
Yes.
life.
Right, mate.
He jumped the barriers and
He
didn't
did.
have a Mikey and was filmed doing it.
This one happened this year, and I love the honesty of Jack Higgins, but he was asked what he was going to do when he was at Gather Round.
Any plans for the week in Adelaide?
No, I don't like Adelaide, so I'll probably be in my room playing Call of Duty with the boys.
Enjoy it anyway.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Well done.
He's in Adelaide all week. I don't like Adelaide. I'm just going to play Call of Duty. What do you reckon about that, Chief?
That's how you endear yourself to the locals.
Well, I think Mr. Malinowskis, old Tunner's mate, got involved after he made that statement.
Coming in at number
love Jack
3,
Higgins.
and I think we played this one a couple of seasons ago, and we talked about it in the game that we did. It was Melbourne coming up against Collingwood, and it just seemed like a very innocent comment when Ed Langdon went with this.
They're sort of all duck, no dinner in a sense that, if they're playing fast footy on their terms, they're a very hard team to stop. But they're a bit of a one-trick pony at times.
The old one-trick pony, Chief.
Got big on him, didn't it, that comment?
And they went hard at
Yeah,
him
they
too,
went
out in the outer
Got
wing.
big on
Why wouldn't they? I mean, what possesses you to talk
He's
about
quite
the
an
opposition?
intelligent guy too, Ed.
Yeah, he
but I
is.
love it. There should be more of it. We shouldn't be belling them on the head when they do it, Chief.
The All Duck No Dinner thing, he would have got away with, but he just kept talking, and then it became
One-trick pony.
Ooh.
Coming in at number 2. Now, this is a commentator. Now, this is outside of his wheelhouse, and I'm not sure whether this was an audition maybe to come over to our network, because I found it quite entertaining, and for not a lot of viewership that would have heard this one, but this is...
Why didn't they hear it?
Jared Waitley on SEN.
Oh, my Godfather! How can you miss that? How can you miss that? There's 4 of them! 4 of them! Oh, extraordinary. 45,000 people saw it clear as day! Oh, boy. They can score review fingers hitting and touching a ball, but a goal like that... Sack 'em all!
Just sack them all.
He's talking about the umpire.
Talking about the umpires.
That's not the G,
a couple of
man.
weeks ago in the goal square.
That's not the
That's
G. Oh,
AI.
was that the trip?
That was a trip. That's
Cosy
that's
Pickett.
That's a big
That must be AI,
statement,
Brownie.
isn't
yeah,
it?
That's
good.
not
Do you,
like
do you get a call from the AFL when you do something like that?
Not Jared.
not Jared.
That's AI.
He can do whatever he
That's
wants
not the
to.
G, man.
No, that was
Sack them all is a big
sack
statement.
them all.
What are we going to
Chief.
replace them with?
Not really sure, but coming in at number 1, and he's second part of the number 1, but Damo's mate, and they were really close for a long, long time, and are still close, but there was no headline like an Acker headline, and there was
Correct.
so many to go through, so many to sift through of Jason Ackerman. Just one-liners, just things that coaches would hate, players that hate, supporters that hate, the media would love, but this is what Lee Matthews said about Acker first.
I feel a little bit better this week because my conscience over the last, since the Acker situation has been, well, did we do everything at the Lions? Did I do everything as coach? Did I do everything as a manager that I could have done to not to get to that situation? Can I tell you in one sentence, Acker's a pain in the arse around the footy club, and once he wasn't going to help you enough on the field, you get him out of the joint.
Reasonably high.
That's simplifying things, isn't it?
You've heard that 50
just a
times, but
pain
it
in
still
the
makes
arse.
you laugh, doesn't it?
That is funny. And then Acker being Acker, this is how Acker summed up the situation.
But with Lee that year, I had a big problem with him. I always took ownership that it was me that caused all the problems. But my biggest problem with Lee was he was a super coach. He worked so hard. And then that particular year, 2006, when I got sacked, he's hardly a trainer. You never saw him. He's doing cashies, he's doing gigs, doing breakfasts, lunches. That pissed me off. Like, it pissed me off. This is what pissed me off about the whole thing, is that Lee, instead of owning it and saying, I'm the coach, this is unworkable, you're out, you're sacked. What he did was he went to Vossi and got the leadership group and said, Vossi, when are you going to stop letting Acker shit on this club and you? And he made sure it came from them. Like the decision looked like it came from them.
Cashies.
He wasn't coaching the club. He was doing cashies.
And breakfast.
Lee Matthews was not doing cashies rather than going to training. I'm not having that.
I'm not disputing Lee Matthews, but your man Acker.
I haven't heard that one, Brownie, that second one. That's funny.
Quick break here. McDonald's Room Hot Water, Triple M Rocks Footy. Damo, you've got 4 minutes and 37 seconds of news in you, Big Daddy.
Ripping game of football last night at the Cattery, Howie. A bit of controversy as always. And Chris Scott, who is so prepared to speak his mind at every occasion this year, did so again last night when asked about the non-goal to Ollie Dempsey. Just to remind people before you hear what Chris Scott says, this was the one that he socked off the ground in the goal square, Brownie. It supposedly flicked the padding on the goal post, and he saw it this way.
I'd love to see the technology around the edge with that shot at goal, because the goal umpire was 30 centimetres away from that. And if he can't hear that or see that, then something's wrong. Like the technology, please. Yeah, I'm prepared to say that, like the edge technology, show us that it works, because they're saying it works off sound. The goal umpire's 30 centimetres away from it. If he doesn't think that it hit the post, I'd back him over the technology any day. And I might have a bit of inside information that it doesn't work that well.
inside information, Brownie, right at the end.
I like that. That's a bit of a clip.
Yeah, he was one of 4 or 5 coaches to meet with Andrew Dillon during the course of the week, Chief. And what Andrew Dillon's doing differently to Gillan McLaughlin in these gatherings, he's having them in groups of 4 and 5, as opposed to the one hit where they sort of probably don't achieve too much. And look, there's a preparedness to listen from Andrew Dillon's perspective, but they're coming from a long way back with a lack of trust, it must be said, from the coaching group, who is the one cohort of the entire industry that's yet to get anywhere near the pre-COVID levels, and it's a serious issue, and it's playing on their minds, and I feel rightly so. Mitch Duncan, 300th game last night, in keeping with the way Mitch Duncan has always carried himself. He's always been about team, and even last night his focus went to a former teammate.
I love the ball in hand. I love distributing the ball to whoever's free and bringing other people into the game. I think that's one of my strengths. So, you know, we all know that I love hitting big Hawkey up and kicking goals, and it's great to see him here tonight. Missing me good mate, Jolie. He's had a tough 3 months, so love him, mate.
It's a great testament to Mitch Duncan, Chief, isn't it, that he's got to 300 games. It's a great testament to the Cats to put him on the list or allow him to stay on the list in 2025. He took 8 rounds of footy with injury and just the way he's preparing for the season to get a game in this season, but he got one and he's now got to 300. And when he's out there, he's still important for the mix.
Yeah, he toiled away in the VFL and had to wait for his opportunity, but they were always going to get him to 300. I think clubs have a good way of looking after great club servants, and he's been just that. He's been a fantastic role player who's played at a high quality for many, many years.
Damn good player to have in the twos as well. If you come into September and you know that you've got a Mitch Duncan sitting there, you can pull the trigger at any time, they're in good shape.
And as we saw, Howie, obviously Jeremy Cameron kicked 6 goals last night, 7 last week against Port Adelaide, 13, just to do the maths on that. He's got West Coast next week. It could be getting back to the Chief and Plugger days in a way where they just used to kick bags of 6 or 7 every week.
Would he be kicking these goals if Dangerfield was playing?
I'd say no, Brownie. I don't think that's a massive
statement. Would Shannon Neal kick 5? Is the forward line functioning better? And could Dangerfield come back and play midfield when he comes back?
It's not their plan, is it? The way they had set up and got to the three-quarter stage of last night's game, 10-point lead to the Cats only. The Dogs were coming, and you thought the one player that Geelong would really want was Dangerfield, and yet Cameron stepped up again, and that weighted kick he gave to Neal, who kicked one of his 5 goals on the back of running onto that ball. That was as good a kick as you'd see under those circumstances. But I think what you've raised, Brownie, is a fascinating insight into the decisions that have to be made at Geelong.
And let's not forget they won some good games with Danger playing forward, though. So he contributed to some big wins as well.
Bailey Smith said to Cam Mooney on Fox that he'd had 4 injections into his shin to play the game.
He did. And then Chris Scott and Andrew Mackey acted as though they didn't know about it. They said they didn't know about it as much as Bailey did. So, look, he was clearly a bit underdone. There's a bit of theatre attached to him not training publicly this week. But as he did say, he was always playing against the Bulldogs despite the 5-day break and despite coming off a knee Rico last year and despite only missing just the 1 game of this season at his new club. He's potentially going to get votes again last night.
I think he's around the 1 vote mark. I think Cameron would have got 3. Neil would have been in there. I thought Holmes was the best midfielder on the day.
Righto, well done, boys. Take the rest of the weekend off.
We are leading up to
Howie.
Good on you, Cheers. Good luck with the bananas. Upside down pineapples.
Essendon v Richmond. That's all coming your way. And
There's
remember,
some stuff going on.
When in doubt, time under tension. Good luck with the Pinas, the Pineapples, Chief. Friday Huddle. McDonald's and Roomont Water, Triple M Rocks Footy.